Let's move on now. African heads of state and government explored what needs to be done to set up an African credit rating agency on the sidelines of the just concluded 38th African Union Summit. Now, CGTN's Nick Mudimba talked to Serah Makka, the Executive Director for Africa at the One campaign, about the move by African nations to set up the African Credit Rating Agency. Here's what she had to say.
African presidents opened up the African Credit Rating Agency. And the reason behind that is Africa is getting penalized when we go to the capital market to borrow. And borrowing, sometimes when you have this conversation, is not about a spreadsheet. It's about whether your country can pay for education and healthcare. As we speak, 25 African countries pay more for their interest rate than they do for education and health combined. What that means is, at the height of the challenges of the fiscal crisis, which we're still in, many countries said we will not pay our nurses and doctors because we need to make sure we pay our interest rates so that we don't default and go into trouble. So it behooves every African to really lean into this conversation on credit ratings because it matters. So now what's happening on the context of the African continent? When we go to the capital market says Africa is risky. And that risk perception makes us have a higher, a reduced credit rating score. And what that means is when we go to the market, we pay more. However, we've noticed that even when we adjust for risks, Africa is still treated differently. So for example, Senegal and Greece, right after Greece's bankruptcy challenge, had the exact same credit rating. So a credit rating says I've priced in the risk in that AAA number or triple B or triple C number. That's what the credit rating, that's what the rating says. So Senegal and Greece had the exact same credit rating. They both went to the capital market to borrow. Greece got a much lower credit rating, 2 to 3%. Senegal got 8%. What 8% looks like, that delta is billions of money more that Senegal will have to pay over time. Right now, Africa as a continent, we pay about 500% more when we go to the capital markets to borrow money. And that means over time, we're paying billions, our generations are paying billions. So, and what that also means is we can't develop as quickly because guess what? Development is all about financing. So this issue of credit rating is very real to Africa. And what do we do to mitigate it? I think that's the question that we want to try and answer today. So the African Credit Rating Agency is a step in that direction. It is not the be-all and end-all, but it is a step in that direction. And why do I say that? Africa does not get money from Africa. And what a credit rating agency says is, I can put my brand forward and say, I've assessed you, Africa, and you are less risky. So therefore, the players in this ecosystem, go ahead and give them money. But the players we're negotiating with are not in Africa. So what the African Credit Rating Agency will do is checkmate what the other three do. The credit rating challenge is, it's run by what we call an oligopoly. Only 3 organizations in all of the world give you a credit rating: Standard & Poor's, Moody, Fitch. They're all based in the United States of America, by the way. They're not regulated by much. I mean, they have some oversight, but they really have a lot of reign. So who checks them? Who challenges their methodology? Who says, I need to see how you got those numbers for Africa? Africa is seen as this far-flung, risky place, not well priced, and that's what we are fighting against. We're saying you must see us as we are, not as you perceive us to be. Hence, President Ikalema's speech today, when he mentioned the quote from Dr. Adeshina. And for the cost of capital agenda that we really do need South Africa to push, embedded within that, we must look at the Basel III framework. The Basel III framework is the financial underpinning that calculates the weight of risk versus capacity of a sovereign. And many of those numbers don't price in some of Africa's assets. So when you do the math, Africa comes out not looking so great. It doesn't price in remittances that comes in. to Africa because that bolsters the economy. It doesn't price in our minerals and the assets underneath the earth because that can make our profile better. So if you look at a lot of architecture, financial architecture that was built, it was built in the 1920s, it was built in the 1940s, and guess what? African countries were colonies. So what we're saying is the design of the architecture that drives everything finance does not benefit Africa. Now we are of age and we're using our voice to say, let us redesign.